guest here on the Variety program. I want to just underscore, he's a good friend. I've known him for very many years. We worked kind of in offices alongside of each other when I was in Senate leadership, gotten to know him pretty well. He is the president and CEO of the American Petroleum Institute. Mike Sommers, ladies and gentlemen. Mike, there he is. Look at this handsome guy, huh? Good Lord. Huh?
Great to see you.
Yeah, great.
My goodness. That looks like a man who represents, the energy industry, shall we say.
It's a man who went to college in Ohio.
Well, here it is again.
There it is.
I actually went to college in the congressional district of John Boehner, which is also the home of the next vice president of the United
That's
States.
exactly right. That's exactly right.
What a gentleman. And listen, before we get into the substance of the interview, I will say that you were, in your organization, a very early supporter of what we're doing here on the Ruthless Variety program. We did an entire series of interviews with primary candidates last year leading into what is now the Republican National Convention. We would not have been able to do it without the help of API and the incredible work that you all are doing. More importantly, to you as the listener, you wouldn't be able to do what you want to do in terms of turning on your light switch without them, because they are absolutely steadfast and you cannot get around them in Washington, D.C. with the organization that this guy's running. So thanks for everything, Mike.
Well, it's great to be here. We wouldn't miss a convention without Ruthless, so we're so proud to be part of the Ruthless family.
Yes.
I'm proud to say that I'm a fan. I listen to every episode, but I'm also excited to announce that my daughter is now a fan of Ruthless, an aspiring guest on the Ruthless Variety Show.
Oh, you got to bring her back. This is terrific news. I mean, we're indoctrinating people of all ages.
Even 21-year-olds at Miami, Ohio.
She's going to school in Miami.
She is.
And as you know,
family tradition.
As you know, Mike, Miami was a university before Florida was a state.
That's
so
exactly
anybody
right.
who's asking that question, which one? That answer.
1809. Exactly right. Great to be in Milwaukee, though.
So you got a lot of stuff going on. And your job gets even more intense when you've got a Democratic administration hell-bent on trying to ruin American energy, period.
Yes.
Right? It doesn't matter in what form or fashion it comes in. They basically want to make us reliant on China. My words, not yours. But look, you've got a mandate in trying to not only represent your members, but trying to make sure the American people understand how significant it is from a national security perspective, from a domestic economy perspective. Like, tell us it feels like you guys have made a lot of progress, I'll be honest with you.
We have made a lot of progress. Let's put this in perspective, though. The United States is now the #1 producer of oil and natural gas in the world.
Man.
And that is mainly because of the innovation from the oil and gas industry. It has nothing to do with a mandate or something that the federal government wanted us to do. It's because of innovation in this industry. But if we get the policies wrong, if we get the regulations gone, that could all go away. So we have to get this right. And unfortunately, what this administration has been pursuing are policies that are going to set us back. They're going to take us back to a place where we're importing oil and gas, not exporting.
Which is wild. I mean,
this is the most important geopolitical thing that we can do domestically, is provide oil and gas not just to us and to our consumers, but to consumers around the world, and particularly to our allies.
Right.
Think about what would have happened if during the Russia invasion of Ukraine, if America wasn't the #1 energy supplier to the world. We would not have been able to replace that Russian piped gas into Europe with American LNG. And what did the Biden administration do? They decided to stop export permits for new LNG terminals, which has halted construction all over the Louisiana and the Texas Gulf Coast.
Terrible.
We've got to change these policies. And unfortunately, it may take an election to get the right remedy for all of us.
Yeah, I think there's no question about that. And I remember, look, everybody on the left wants to think of the energy industry and some boogeyman, right? And like every 10 years it becomes, well, these guys are all responsible for our gas price or whatever it is that they can't directly be blamed for. They just try to shove it off on you. But there are hard times too. And we all remember what it was like during COVID, for example, when the government basically locked things down. People couldn't travel about the country. Price of everything came around. I just remember your leadership in that time in talking with then President Trump about what President Trump tried to do to invest in oil and gas and try to make sure that we took advantage not only with the industry, but on behalf of the American people. And Democrats were like, no way. So it seems like the relationship that you all have built, at least over the 4 years that he was president, is incredibly important.
Well, that's just it. We don't actually have to speculate what kind of policies this
Yeah,
president would
right.
put into place. We know the policies he's going to put in place because he was in office for 4 years. And during that period, we dealt with one of the biggest crises that this industry has ever felt. Oil prices actually went negative for a day, negative $30 as a consequence to a flood of oil coming from Russia and Saudi Arabia. We sat in the Oval Office with the president. He agreed that he was going to negotiate to try to stop that flood of oil that was coming in the United States and dealing with this terrible pandemic that we dealt with. So we know what we're going to get. We know that he's going to pursue American energy independence, and we're excited about that. So it's unfortunate that we're dealing with this situation we're in because we are still producing more oil and gas than we ever have before, but most of it is on private lands.
Yeah, interesting.
And 20% of the oil and gas that we get right now is actually on public lands in the Gulf of Mexico and onshore. So the real question is, this President Biden right now, what he's doing is he's trying to stop oil and gas wherever he can, which is on federal lands and with the regulatory onslaught. If we could just get back to a place where we have regularity, where we have regular lease sales in the Gulf of Mexico, where we're permitting and leasing on federal lands, we would be in a much better place geopolitically, and it'd be better for American consumers.
Are you saying, Mike, that 3.5 years ago when Joe Biden was sworn in as president, all of a sudden everything started to shut down?
Everything slowed down. Think about it this way. Were it not for Joe Manchin mandating that there were lease sales in the Gulf of Mexico, there would be zero lease sales in the Gulf of Mexico during this president's term.
Wow.
And he is
Zero.
mandated to have lease sales in the Gulf of Mexico. And we got 2, but only because of Joe Manchin's negotiation. This year, for the first time in 40 years, we'll have 0 lease sales in the Gulf of Mexico.
Unreal.
To put this in perspective, we are still operating on leases from the Reagan administration. This is a long-term investment. And if you don't have those lease sales regularly, you're not going to have the energy that you need 30, 40, 50 years from now. So what these policies are doing is they're sowing the seeds of the next energy crisis. We have to invest now for the future.
No question about it. The other piece of this, Mike, that I find interesting, I know you guys are very involved in, is it's not just about limiting our domestic production of energy. They've been pretty clear on that for a period of years. It's also about changing everything in our economy to sort of be more reliant on China. The electric vehicle mandate, for example. It's something President Trump talks a lot about. I hear congressional Republicans talk about. We've been wailing on this thing on the Variety program because we can't figure out for the life of me how you can claim to represent this country, understanding what makes us stronger economically, stronger from a national security perspective vis-a-vis the world, and then saying, well, let's throw that out and let's go rely on them, as if we haven't seen recent evidence about what it looks like when we have to be entirely reliant on other places of the world. Right? I mean, it's wild to me.
Well, again, if you think about the fact that in 2008, we were producing about 6 million barrels of oil a day, and that number was going down. And then fracking, horizontal drilling came along, and we were able to produce more. We now produce 13 million barrels of oil every single day. That's an American success story. And that number's going up, and it will go up if we can continue to invest in that kind of development. So before 2008, we were dependent on OPEC. Why in the world would we want to go back to a situation where now we're dependent on China? China imports 10 million barrels of oil every single day. They're not energy independent. We should be proud of this. We should be proud of our American independence. We should be pursuing more energy independence. And unfortunately, a lot of these policies are going to take us in the exact opposite direction.
Don't you kind of get the impression every once in a while that you got like a Chinese ambassador sitting around being like, are they going to do this for us? I mean, this has been a real disadvantage for us, but look at these guys. They're going to do this for us, aren't they?
Well, you think about we have these rare earth minerals in the United States.
Yeah.
It's only rare that you mine for them. They're not rare,
Right.
but they're not allowing us to mine for these
So
rare
it's a
earth minerals either.
double whammy.
I mean, just today, the administration announced that they're trying to cut back on the amount of acreage in Alaska in an area called the National Petroleum Reserve. I mean, you can't make this stuff up.
Can't make it up.
So everywhere they can restrict, they are. And it is only because of production on private lands that we're able to continue to produce more in the United States. And we need to do more of it.
And you know what's so wild? Most of the people who drove into work this morning put gas in their car. And they're going to rely on that same tank of gas to get them home at night. And then they're going to do it again tomorrow. And they're going to do it again the next day. And so what the Biden administration is doing, what Democrats are doing, is completely setting normal people back I mean, everybody just wants to go to work. You know, they're not trying to change the world. They're just trying to change their paycheck.
Yep.
And they can't do it if Biden is like tamping down on them like this.
Well, it's something that a friend of mine calls regressive progressivism. These are regressive taxes on the people who can't afford it. And now they want to force you into an electric vehicle. That might make sense for someone who lives in Washington, D.C. and commutes 20 miles a day.
Right.
I mean, honestly, it might make sense for some of us on this stage because we don't commute that far.
I will
If you
never
live in-
own an electric
Me
vehicle.
neither. Don't worry. There's no threat of me ever running. But it does not make sense for somebody who lives in Wisconsin,
Yeah.
who
Right.
works on a dairy farm, who has to get in a pickup every single day.
Right.
And they're trying to force feed these kinds of vehicles down the throats of people who don't want them. And certainly, it doesn't make sense for their lifestyle.
Right. Right.
Well, listen, this is one of the most effective advocates, and I'm not just blowing sunshine here, pal. I really mean it, and I talked to an awful lot of your colleagues who think the exact same. This is one of the most effective advocates for any product. But what you're doing and what your organization is doing on behalf of Americans throughout this country is incredibly admirable. It literally means dollars in the pockets of people throughout this country. They may never know who you are, but I can promise you they're thankful for Mike Sommers. So thanks so much for all the work that you've done.
Thanks, guys. And thanks for everything you're doing. So it's great to be in Milwaukee with you.
Thanks for being a part of it, pal.
Thank you.